Welcome back. I'm Alien Mafia, and this is part 2 of the guides of the archetypes of City of Heroes. Today we'll be talking about the Tanker, which is primarily the aggro uh, for the enemies to attack you. So you draw in most of the damage to yourself to protect your teammates, and this is the primary role of the Tanker class. So we'll go more into detail on the Tanker and the types of powers it has. So here are the primaries. These are your armors, so your types of defense and resistance and regen to damage that's coming at you. And we'll talk about each one individually and kind of talk about individual powers that are key to the build or that are make that set stand out. And then we'll go into the secondary powers. Secondary powers are your melee abilities, and these will be mostly the same between tanks, scrappers, stalkers are a little bit different, and brutes. So first we'll go into the primary stats because that's what tankers rely on, is their strength against incoming damage. So first we'll talk about bioarmor. Bioarmor is mostly resistance based with regen, but also has what's a newer mechanic called absorb. Some of you may not be used to that mechanic, but absorb is a buffer of hit points above your maximum hit points. So if you have your max hit points at 3,500, which is roughly the maximum amount of hit points tankers can have, you can actually add on health above that with absorb. So bioarmor has absorb mechanics in it. This power set contains a lot of unique and great powers that make it work, and we'll go through each one individually. So some of these are passive abilities, like Inexhaustible is a passive ability, and Evolving Armor is your AoE taunt. It's got taunt mechanic in the AoE so that enemies that are directly around you will stick to you. But once an enemy goes away and your allies start attacking it, that aggro will actually be drawn towards them and not towards you because it's outside your taunt. You have a ranged taunt in your secondary powers, which we'll talk about later. And your main healing ability is DNA Siphon. It's a great heal, and it comes up pretty often. And then you have other powers like Ablative Carapace. This has got a lot of regeneration and absorption attached to it. Adaptation is an adaptation has 3 different types of toggles that are in it. So you have efficient, defensive, and offensive. And your other great powers is genetic contamination. This will actually decrease the damage that your enemies deal while increasing your survivability. And then parasitic aura is your tier 9, is what people call it, is your go-to for survival. If you're getting pushed to the wall, you can hit this to become even stronger temporarily, or just become stronger temporarily at any point that you want. Some people just do it the last second as a means of surviving something that you wouldn't normally survive against. Dark Armor is it's an endurance heavy armor set. Arguably is probably the most heaviest, but don't let that deter you. It is a very strong set, and it's got a lot of potential if you can get the endurance issues down. Again, it's not super terrible, but it's a really strong set. The healing, the dark regeneration, is a heal to all the enemies around you, and more enemies you hit, the more you heal. If you hit this, you basically regenerate or heal your entire hit points is that good, and you can get this recharge down to pretty quick. You have your general, you have your AoE taunt that does a little bit of damage. You have your armor, resistance, or protection against status effects, so like knockdown, stun, hold, sleep, confuse. Cloak of Darkness is like a stealth that gives you defense. I personally would not actually use the power, but I would just use it as a means of defensive procs from different sets. It's tempting to use, but I'd be more worried about your threat level decreasing. It's not that big of a deal because you do have a AoE damage taunt, an AoE fear taunt, and an AoE stun taunt. So you can stack these like crazy, and they'll draw to you. It's just from a range, you got to get up close to them for them to see you. Cloak of Fear is an amazing power. Fear is a great way for control, for a control ability. Cloak of Fear's problem is that it costs a lot of endurance. So this is one of the primary reasons why it's a heavy end set. This and Death Shroud are very end heavy. Oppressive Gloom is a cheap stun. It's a low magnitude, so it only hits minions, but because it's an AoE stun, it'll stack. So it'll eventually stun lieutenants, bosses, and farther if you can get it stacking that much. And then Soul Transfer is an amazing res. It's a self-res. It draws in and stuns everything around you when you res up. Next is Electric Armor. Electric Armor is it's kind of in the middle ground for end, mainly because like Lightning Field is a lot of endurance, but it's got a power that helps with endurance. Power Sync, you just get a bunch of endurance back. Energize reduces endurance use. So it's a good set. It's not end heavy, but it's kind of just in the middle. But it does have powers to help you recover your hit point or your endurance. Energizes your heal. It doesn't heal for a lot, and it comes up okay, but it's enough to heal up when you need it. Fire Aura is pretty popular because it's more of a damaging primary set. So if you're building your tank to be more of a damaging type of tank, Fire Aura is great. Electric's okay, but Fire Aura is more of a damaging set. You have your AoE damage set power. You have your heal, which comes up very fast and it heals you quite a bit. Temperature protection isn't needed because you already cap your fire resistance on a normal build, but some people get it for like a proc dump like I do, but it's not a mandatory power. Consume is your AoE endurance power. It makes it so that it's not a power endurance hungry set. Plasma Shield is your other shield along with fire. But Burn, this is why most people get it. Burn is a small area effect burn that you set on the ground, doesn't follow you, but it does a lot of damage, and a lot of people combine this with a secondary that also does high damage to have either a farming build, or they just like to do damage and not just a pure tank. Fire Embrace it's like a build up, so it increases your damage not by percentage, but it adds fire damage to your attacks. So it doesn't matter what your attack is, it'll add fire. So if you have like an ice melee, you can actually add fire damage to that ice melee. It's interesting. And then Rise of the Phoenix, it's a self-res, and it'll damage and like knock everything away when you get up. Ice Armor is a very defensive set, but it's got a lot of holes in it that make it kind of hard to build for. because it's purely defense with not a whole lot of defense debuff resistance. So you have your main defense power. You've got your heal. This doesn't come up very often, but it does heal you for a lot. Chilling Embrace is an AoE taunt, and also decreases their speed of which they move and decrease their recharge rate. Wet Ice is your other toggle for your defense, and as well as Permafrost. Permafrost is more of a passive ability, so it gives you cold resistance, but not a lot. Glacial Armor is your other armor, along with Frozen Armor. Icicles is a PBOE damage ability, so you actually have two, so it's a good taunting set. Energy Absorption, it draws in from enemies, and it drains their endurance, and it boosts your defense to all attacks. So you have no resistance in this set, and that's the issue, is that once you start getting debuffs, your defense debuffed, you don't have anything to fall back on. There's no resistance or anything. So when you do the build, you got to put in resistance from sets. And then Hibernate is it's a clicky, and you just get into a block of ice, and you're invulnerable. You can't be damaged, and your regeneration goes through the roof, and your recovery goes through the roof. Problem is that when you go into Hibernate, you lose all your time. So your allies will start to be attacked because you've had to resort to encapsulating yourself in ice. Invulnerability is a very popular set. It's a little end heavy. I wouldn't call it a normal endurance type of power set, but it is end heavy. Resistance, physical damage is just a passive. That's your main toggle. Unyielding is your main ability. Is Tough Hide. Dull Pain is your heal. It increases your hit points and increases your health by a lot. And Unstoppable is your tier 9. Problem with Unstoppable is that it makes you unstoppable, but when it runs out, you lose a lot of your health and a lot of your endurance. So it is a end all power that should only be used when you know you're not going to be in danger after your fight's over, so that you can stop and recover and get your toggles back up and stuff. Radiation Armor is a newer set. It's a pretty well-rounded set. Not a whole lot of defense in it, but it's got good regeneration, good resistance. Your main powers that make it different is Radiation Therapy is your heal. Beta Decay is great because it's an AoE taunt, but it also decreases their to hit. So even though you don't have a lot of defense, because you're decreasing their to hit, it acts like you have some defense. Particle Shielding is great. Gives you a lot of regeneration, and it gives you an absorption shield. Ground Zero is like a PBOE attack. It's just a one-off hit. It does great damage. And then Meltdown is your tier 9. Meltdown isn't that great because it adds resistance to an already resistance build. So if you're capped on resistance and you're struggling to survive, hitting Meltdown's not going to help you, because it adds resistance to capped resistance. And capped resistance is going any higher doesn't help you. Shield Defense is another damaging farming type of primary, and it's all defense. But in this case versus Ice Armor, this case actually has defense debuff resistance. It's not a lot, but it's enough. So you have all your main toggles. This is it's not a heal, it just gives you max hit points, but it's not a clicky, it's passive. Active Defense, it's a clicky. Your protection against status effects is a clicky, so you gotta have that on auto, or be ready to trigger that all the time. Against all odds is your AoE taunt. The more enemies around you, the more your damage goes up. Phalanx Fighting is a passive ability that increases your defenses based on how many allies are around you. So this works great when your team is always with you. It's stacking defense. Grants cover to all your allies, so it actually increases their defense a lot. This is a great power because it does help the survivability of your group. Some people don't take it because it doesn't help yourself, which I can understand that. That's fine. But the thing that most people miss is that grant cover gives yourself defense debuff resistance. So even though it doesn't give you any defense, it gives you protection towards enemies that will knock your defense down, and that's bad because defense is your main survivability tool. Defense and max hit points from True Grit. Shield Charge is the power that people grab this for. Shield Charge is a teleport AoE damage ability that's got a big range. So a lot of people use this as just a means of knocking an enemy out quick and then move on to that next one. It's a great farming type of power set. Stone Armor it's a unique set. Stone Armor is a quintessential tank. It's a tank. That's all it is. Rock Armor, Stone Skin is a passive. Earth's Embrace is a clicky heal for a lot, and it gives you max hit points. Mud Pots is an AoE taunt damaging ability. Rooted gives you the status protection, but Rooted also makes you run super slow, and it gives you some regeneration. So it's a good power to get. Brimstone Armor and Crystal Armor and Minerals are all different armors. So Brimstone Armor gives you fire and cold. Crystal gives you negative and energy. And Minerals gives you psionic defense. And Minerals gives you psionic defense. And then the best armor, the best power, the only armor that you should need is Granite Armor. Granite Armor gives you massive resistance, massive defense to everything except for psionic. It's a really good power. It's the key to the set. And when you do Granite and Rooted, you basically can't move at all. So teleport power, travel power is kind of mandatory. I personally go teleport and super speed because that way I can get I can super speed from mission to mission, and then teleport during the mission. So if going from group to group, I would teleport. The key behind the set is that the armors don't work when you're using Granite Armor. Minerals, Crystal, Brimstone, and Rock Armor don't work. You can't use them during Granite Armor. It's either this or all these. Granite Armor is better than all of them combined, but Granite Armor doesn't give psionic. So some people build the other way and not use Granite Armor, which it's doable, but you got to work at it. You got to work on your build and make sure you get that right. Super Reflex is one of the newer sets that got ported over recently. Its AoE taunt is evasion. Yeah, is evasion. It had to get added in because evasion normally doesn't have a taunt, but they needed an AoE taunt because that's kind of the cornerstone of a tank primary set. This is a full defensive set, and it has a recharge power as well that'll increase your recharge. So if you want to attack a little bit quicker, you use this. But it's a high defensive set with no resistance and almost no hit points. The difference here is that Super Reflex has very high defense debuff resistance, like 90%, 95%. Is really high, and this will help. You don't have to build your defense as high, because every time an enemy hits you, it doesn't debuff you as much as another set would be. So even though this is purely defense, it takes a long time for an enemy group to knock that down beyond to a point to where it can start cascading your defense down farther. And Elude is your other tier 9. Elude is actually a pretty good power because it doesn't have... No, Elude does. Okay. Elude is your tier 9 power, and Elude is your, oh crap, I'm gonna die soon, I need to fire it. It will drain you of all of your endurance, and you won't be able to recover for a while, so make sure that you're either out of the group or you're done killing the group when that wears off. Willpower is my favorite of the tanker primaries. It's an all-around survivability set. So it has a little bit of defense, a little bit of resistance, really good regen, and really good max hit points. So you have a lot of flexibility on how you build your character. So you have your high pain tolerance, which is an auto power, but it's really good. This will increase your hit points as well. This is your hit point gainer. Mind over bodies, smashing lethal resistance, fast healing. This is your stash protection. Rise to the challenge is your AoE taunt. Rise to the challenge gives you regeneration per enemy around you. So the more enemies around you, up to 10, the more regen you get. Quick recovery. This is a really good endurance use power set because you have help with recovery. Heightened senses is defensive ability. Resurgence is your self-res, and the strength of will is your tier 9. My opinion with this set is that strength of will is not a very good tier 9. Don't rely on it to survive, to help you survive. It's not very good. I do use it for proc dump for certain enhancements because it's resistance based, and there's a lot of resistance sets that have a nice single enhancement that boosts other aspects of your character. And resurgence is your self-res. Overall, when I try and do builds, unless it's like dark armor where the res actually affects the enemies, or fire that affects the enemies, I normally don't take the self-res. That's my personal build mantra. Is when I'm building a tank or building a character in a certain way, I'm building in such a way that I'm unlikely that I'm gonna die. So wasting a power slot on a self-res should never be needed. But if I ever have an extra power slot, I normally get it. And we'll go into our secondaries, but we'll go through this pretty quick because it's a tank. It's not for damage. We'll go into these more with scrappers, brutes, and stalkers, because stalker is a little bit different. So battle axe, it's a great AoE cone attacking set with some really good strong single target hits. Broadsword, same thing. It's got some really good AoEs and single targets. Claws, very cheap, very fast recharge. A couple AoEs. It very straight to AoE, but it's not very big. Shockwave is a big AoE, but it's got knockback. Put down the knockback conversion proc in it. And then spin. Spin's a good attack. Follow up is your build up that increases your damage. Dark melee. It's mostly single target. This is not an AoE set. Soul Drain is AoE, but this is mainly used to increase your damage. And then Dark Consumption is also an AoE, but it doesn't do a lot of damage. This is for endurance. This will increase your endurance. So if you're going with an endurance heavy set, like Super Reflex, like Invulnerability, or Dark, you combine it with dark melee because it gives you some help. But this is primarily single target. Dual blades is a single target slash cone. It's pretty evenly distributed. Dual blades though has a built-in comboing mechanic, and I will go into this farther in the Scrapper archetype guide. Electric melee is a pretty well famous farming type of character because it has lightning rod, which is like shield charge. Chain induction, it chains from enemy to enemy, so it hits like almost everything in the group. Jacob's ladder is a really strong cone, and Thunderstrike is a strong AoE. Energy melee is a endurance heavy set, but it hits hard. The animations are kind of long, so some people don't like to use it because of that, but it's a single target set. It's got a little bit of a heal here, but it's mainly single target. Fire melee is one of the top, if not the highest DPS, damage per second, and that's because the abilities in here can chain with each other with the right recharge that it'll give you the highest DPS in the game. Between Incinerate, Greater, Fire Sword, it's amazing. It's got some AoEs. Combustion's not that strong, but it's pretty good. And Fire Sword Circle is the good one. Breath of Fire I generally skip because the cone is small, but it just all depends on what you're combining it with. Ice melee, it's not a strong melee at all, unless you're building it for a concept of a character that is like, I don't know, you're a snowman. I really wouldn't bother with this. This is my personal opinion. The powers are weak because when they build the sets, they build around trying to balance it. And because ice has a natural minus recharge, minus movement speed to it, it kind of weakens the damage because it has a nice secondary effect. But for tanks, I guess it's useful. Ice Patch will knock down anything right next to you within melee range. So if you're looking for more survivability, Ice melee is okay, but not for damage. Don't worry about it. Katana, it's single target, but it's got some good AoEs. Lowest drop is good. Flashing Steel is great. Divine Avalanche will give you melee defense and lethal defense, but no smashing. So you gotta. This will help you survive, but against certain enemy groups. Kinetic melee is a good all-around build. It's single target and AoE. And it's got some really cool animations. Martial arts will come back later because it's my favorite. Sonic melee is a good all-around set. It's got good single target and good AoE. And the benefit of Sonic melee is that it's psionic, so it'll actually hit through a lot of enemies' tier 9s or a lot of enemies' defenses, because Sonic is that special damage that is hard to defend against. Radiation melee, it's a good set. It's kind of like energy, where the animations are actually kind of slow, but irradiated ground is a toggle PBOE defense debuff power. So you can actually put some nice stuff in here that'll increase your damage as well. Radiation Siphon is a heal. Proton Sweep is a cone. And then Atom Smasher is a PBOE. It's a pretty good one. But it's a slow animation. So if you like that quick attacking, this is not the set. Savage Melee is very nice. It's got some really good AoEs. Savage Leap, Rending Flurry is great. Shred's Cone is great. And it's got some good single target stuff. So Hemorrhage, Viscerous Slash, and Maiming Slash are all really good single targets. And they all kind of build off of each other. This is a good set. Spines This was my main character back on live. It was a Spines Willpower Scrapper. Barb Swipe is okay. The recharge and damage is kind of low, but it works pretty well. Lunge is good. Lunge's animation, I think, is a little too slow for the second power in a set. Spine Burst is great. Ripper's a small cone, but it hits pretty hard. Quills is a toggle, AoE toggle, so you get an extra taunt there, and you can do special things with this power. I'll show you in future videos. Staff fighting is fun. It's got good AoE, good cone, good single target. It's a great all around build. Staff mastery allows you to switch between different modes, so offense, defensive, and efficiency, and it'll give you different things for each toggle within that power. Stone melee is very endurance heavy. It's a very endurance heavy power set, along with axe and broadsword, very end heavy. But stone is a very hard hitting single target set. Tremors and AoE and faults stun or knockdown AoE or stun AoE, but tremors is okay, but very end heavy. Street Justice is kind of end heavy, but it's got really good AoEs and really good single targets. This is one of the newer sets, and they did a good job at making it. Super Strength is a fan COH player favorite set. Knockout Blow does amazing damage. This is a farming set. Rage is great. Rage hurts your defense when it wears off, so build it to prepare for that. Foot Stomp is high damage AoE. It's great. This is an all around good set. Tight weapons, hits hard, good cones, good single target, all around good set. Two things though is that they chain off of each other, so one would build up momentum so that the next power that's normally swing slow will swing fast. So you got to learn which powers to use in which order before your momentum goes away, and then you have to rebuild it back up by using the one of the powers that's the slowest animation, so you can start chaining again. And is very endurance heavy. Because they made the damage very high, they had to decrease the animation time and increase the endurance use of it. So it's an end heavy power set, but very strong, very strong. And War Mace is just like Battle Axe and Sword. It's got good AoEs, cones, and single target, so it's really good. A little end heavy. It's not as end heavy as some of the other ones, but this is end heavy. And that will wrap up part 2. Part 3, we will be going over Peacebringers. And this is Alien Mafia, and call me Alien. I'm live on Twitch mostly every day, about 7 p.m. Pacific. Just look me up and give me a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe, and I hope to bring out more videos in the future. So, see you around.